Welcome back. This is part 2 of Tomato. On the last video, I discussed the type of watercolor paper I was using and that it was pre-stretched on a Gorilla watercolor board. The professional watercolors that I am using for this painting are Sennelier's Red Orange and Blue Indanthrene, Winsor & Newton's Scarlet Lake, Winsor Red Deep, and Alizarin Crimson, Daniel Smith's Pyrrole Scarlet and Quinacridone Magenta, and finally Schmincke Cadmium Red Light. I discussed the wet on wet and wet on dry techniques and their advantages to produce the most realistic style of painting. Using this combination in a single painting allow for the multitude of layers required to make objects appear three-dimensional. The layering or glazing of translucent pigments one on top of the other allows for the underlayer to be seen through the upper layer, giving the individual tomato its density when it is just paint on flat paper. As the light source hits the highest rounded edge of the tomatoes, it begins to flow around the tomatoes and transition into the shadows. Applying these subtle color gradations begins to turn the shape of the flat tomato, making it appear round and plump, allowing me to achieve the spatial illusion of depth and form. Also notice that I changed the temperature of the colors that I am using in the gradation from the highlights to the shadows. I start with the lightest warm red-orange where the light hits. Then I deepen the value of the warm red-orange by adding more pigment and transition to cool blue-violet on the edge or side of the tomato that is in shadow. Achieving depth and form applies to the inside of the cut tomato as well. Here I need to show that the little seeds are suspended in the gelatinous membrane and that this membrane is deep. Adding more pigment and tinting it with a little blue indanthrene and Winsor Red Deep starts to show some of the needed depth. I added another layer of alizarin crimson, quinacridone magenta, and blue indanthrene to the edges of the previously painted tomatoes to make them recede back. I will do this layer after layer until I achieve the depth that appears the most realistic. I gave the cut tomato another layer of paint, and now I'm lifting the color of the fleshy meat of the tomato to bring it forward and deepening the outer skin color with Winsor Red Deep and Alizarin Crimson. On the second half of the cut tomato, the gelatinous membrane appears to look more lavender in color because it is picking up the reflected light off the white of the table. In part 3, I will begin to lay in the cast shadows in the cool blue-violet tones, adding to the spatial depth and form of the tomatoes, to themselves as a group and as to individuals to the paper. This is Janine Ferranti. I hope you enjoyed part 2. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for part 3 of Tomato Tomato.